Yo, what the hell is up? Welcome back to Reviews with Jake, where I just got done watching The Batman. The Batman is a new Batman film which takes place very early on in Batman's vigilante career. Gotham is awful and getting worse thanks to the methodical reign of the psychopathic Riddler. Man, I feel bad for Batman, not because his parents were murdered when he was young or whatever, I mean, yeah, that sucks. But because Christopher Nolan set the bar so high for solo Batman films with The Dark Knight, so high that even he himself could not touch it with The Dark Knight Rises. So I'd imagine it has to be so intimidating for someone to try and pick up this character, this IP. I mean, it's been 10 plus years since we've had a solo Batman film. But here we are, 2022, with a new Batman, new Catwoman, new villains, new Gotham, new director. And let's not waste any time here. The pros start right there with fantastic direction. Matt Reeves is a stud. He can make a damn good picture. Like, I loved his Planet of the Apes films. I don't think it's out of line to say that Planet of the Apes could be, in the wrong hands, very dumb and cheesy as hell. Hell, the same thing could be said about Batman. But he just found a way to bring it down to a digestible, grounded level, a level and interpretation that we have never really seen before. Almost every single aspect of this film falls in line with this vision, this executive decision to make things gritty and dark. Let's start with the atmosphere. If you ask me, Gotham has never looked better. It's supposed to be this crime-ridden cesspool, yet in the Christopher Nolan films, you look at it like, that's just Chicago. Gotham here has a vibe to it. It almost feels like a post-apocalyptic dystopia. Like, the city is developed for sure, but it's like crime is an identity of the city. This isn't like just avoid Skid Row and you'll be fine. Like, this is the whole city. There's nowhere safe. It's anarchy. And who's battling it? The fabled Batman, who's nice and snug in the dark corners of every single criminal's mind at night. They did an outstanding job establishing Batman as sort of the boogeyman for criminals. Like, the opening of this film is an absolute treat. They establish this crooked ass city and all the criminals within it and how they view this sort of urban legend that is Batman. We dive into Batman's head very early on with some fantastic use of narration, sort of this inner dialogue. It almost feels like The Watchmen or something. Like, it is so damn good. This movie opens so awesomely. I personally love this narrative method. There's a reason why I always bring this inner dialogue into all these shorts that I've made over the years, because there's no better way to dive into a character's head. And who is seriously more interesting of a head to dive into than Batman, a guy who runs around at night and beats people up in the shadows? Like, what and how does that guy think? You get an immediate sense that you're going to dive into the gutter for 3 hours with this movie. Like, all of the darkness, it's a very dark movie, but it's contrasted by some very bright, intense saturation from LED boards or street lights at night. It's just so immersive. You spend most of the runtime at night. Hardly any of it takes place during the day, which is a great decision because you never really feel safe watching this movie. You feel like a person walking around the streets at night, like there's just no safety to flee to. And the soundtrack for this film fits perfectly. Like, the score is just golden. It's eerie and haunting at some moments while booming and epic the next. Like, I don't even know the words to describe it. This film just constantly just sends chills down your spine with the music, which pairs so well when things actually ramp up and the action happens in this movie. Granted, it does not happen often. This isn't really like a breakneck pace of a Batman movie. It's much more of a gritty crime drama more than anything. But when the action happens, like, damn. The hand-to-hand combat scenes are so well choreographed. Lots of long, wide shots that really let the action marinate and work instead of a lot of quick, rapid cuts. You can actually tell what the hell is going on. Then there's like the driving scene, which is so intense. I probably would have gone with less of the fixed camera GoPro-like angles. I feel like they went a little overboard on those, but that did not take away from the brilliance of this four-wheeled sequence. And the thing is, it all felt real. Like, when you go to a Marvel movie these days, you see like the Statue of Liberty falling over and you're just like, it's big, but CGI. But this, you're watching like, holy f***, did they really destroy a highway? Was it CGI? I have no idea. Probably a little bit, but not all of it. But the fact of the matter is, it made me question it. I didn't automatically assume it was CGI, and that makes all of the difference. I think we've sort of gotten desensitized over the years with movies like Marvel, like Age of Ultron, when they pick up a big chunk of Earth in a city and it flies off of the ground and starts floating. Like, we've seen everything. Nothing surprises us anymore. And we all know that it's fake. Like, we know for a fact that they did not raise a chunk of Earth and have it float over the surface. Like, we know it's computer generated. But here it's a simple car chase, one car chasing another car. It could happen in any big city on the highway. That could be you in one of the cars just driving home from work. It's feasible. So I don't know, I just think it's super refreshing to see superhero films get brought down to ground level again. Like both DC and Marvel have just gotten completely off the rails. It's good to see something, digestible, like something we could actually believe again. Speaking of feeling grounded, let's go down the impressive list of characters and actors that portray them in this movie. Let's obviously start with Robert Pattinson as the Batman and Bruce Wayne. As I mentioned before, most of this runtime takes place at night, which you can probably deduct that we're going to get a lot more Batman than we do with Bruce Wayne. This makes sense for this interpretation, which is super critical when you're judging his portrayal of the character. If you're expecting Robert Pattinson to be the playboy billionaire showboater that he typically is portrayed as Bruce Wayne, you're just not going to get that with this movie. If you're expecting that, you're not going to like Robert Pattinson's portrayal of Bruce Wayne. But if you open your mind to a take of the character that probably makes a little bit more logical sense, you're going to dig what Robert Pattinson does with the character. I personally did as well. Because we're talking about a dude whose parents were murdered when he was a child, and he spent his whole life training to sort of avenge them in a sense, and then he goes out at night and beats criminals to a pulp. Do you honestly believe that a person like that is going to walk around during the day with a chummy $5 million smile, all clean and cut without any darkness around him? Let's be real. I get that the playboy billionaire philanthropist is sort of the version of Bruce Wayne we're used to seeing, and that's what we've kind of established is the correct one, but that does not mean it's realistic, and this movie is aiming for realistic. I personally love that with comic book films, when they dive into the cracks, those deeper implications that we might not think of, like the MCU, where it explores all the different aspects of society after the snap. People didn't just disappear and reappear after 7 years with no implication. There are financial implications, personal implications, career and educational implication, the list goes on. DC has done it well at times too, like in the beginning of Batman v Superman, you're seeing the throwdown of General Zod and Superman from the ground level of people that were on the streets when buildings were collapsing. They weren't looking up at the sky and being like, hey, it's Superman, go Superman. They were like, holy f***, that building's falling. I get that a lot of people out there, a lot of DC and Batman purists probably are going to think that this interpretation of the character sucks, but just because it's different does not mean it sucks. This vision for the character, this brooding, damaged, quiet, recluse of a man is not only the psychosis that we should expect from a character like this, given everything he has seen and everything he has done, but it also better fits this mold of realism that Matt Reeves is trying to achieve. If we have Christian Bale's interpretation of the character, I just don't feel like it would have fit in this movie. So I personally thought that Robert Pattinson's portrayal was perfect. It was just what this movie needs. I thought he did a brilliant job. Let's continue down the list. I'm not going to spend as much time with everyone else. The movie's called The Batman, so naturally I had to spend a little bit of time on him. Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Like, wow. First off, I was not expecting to get as much of this character as we've gotten. I was expecting like a scene or two, kind of like an Easter egg, but he's actually a pretty decent size of the show. And he crushes it, and he's completely unrecognizable. Like, even Heath Ledger's Joker, as amazing as it is, I can look at a picture of that and I could see past the makeup and see Heath Ledger. But this, I can look at a picture of his interpretation of the Penguin literally all day, and I will never, ever, ever see Colin Farrell, not only in appearance, but also his portrayal of the character. It's so over the top, and I applaud him for being so committed. John Taturo as Carmine Falcone, like another character I was not expecting to see at all in this movie, and he got so much screen time, and I did not know that Taturo was playing the character. And he nailed it as well. He has like this devious, evil confidence to him that just screams crime boss or crime lord. Jeffrey Wright as Detective Gordon, another character I was not expecting to see as much of. I was expecting just a few collaborations here and there, but him and Batman are basically partners in this movie. And I thought the two of them played really well off of each other. They sort of had like a good cop, bad cop dynamic. Andy Serkis as Alfred, kind of on the opposite side of the coin of all the ones I've listed so far. I was expecting a little bit more from him. We'll get into that later, but I thought His portrayal of the character was great. He is seriously such an underrated weapon of a performer. He can do drama, he can do comedy, whether it's actually him or if he's covered up in motion capture suit like Gollum or Caesar. Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle / Catwoman, I thought she did a great job portraying sort of the opposite of Batman. You know, they kind of have that magnetic yet very clashing relationship. I thought the two of them played very well off of each other. And of course, Paul Dano's Riddler, the talk of the week. And as you'd expect based on my love for Robert Pattinson's Batman, yeah, I loved this interpretation of the Riddler. Is it very much in line with the acceptable vision of the character that we've seen over the years? No, probably not, but is it more gritty, realistic, and believable? Absolutely. Paul Dano is such a great actor. Like, I remember the first time I saw him in The Girl Next Door, early 2000s, like a hysterical movie, but seriously nothing memorable about his performance in it. But then he just slowly starts popping up more and more places over the years, slaying every single role he's in. It makes it feel like that first role that he was in and most known for, at least in my case, was sort of an outlier. Huh, sort of sounds like someone else in this movie. That's interesting. But Dano can act like a mofo, like he is so talented and he embodies that psychosis of a psychopathic serial killer to a T. That sounds like an insult, but I promise, it's a compliment. However, this sort of leads me to my very nitpicking, abbreviated list of cons. I wanted more Riddler. You get a pretty strong dose of him early on in the film, and then he kind of comes back toward the end, but in that middle portion, he kind of takes a little bit of a back seat so that the other antagonists of the film can take more of center stage. Other antagonists with other character webbing and subplots that I found a little dense and convoluted. It wasn't terrible, I guess. It was a little plotty, but never to the point that I was ready to check out of the film, but that middle act was the only point where I felt like I was really starting to feel the weight of that 3-hour runtime. My other, yet again, very light criticism that I have for the movie is there are a few arcs that I feel like weren't exactly earned. I touched briefly before on the fact that we don't get enough Alfred, and I stand by that notion, especially with the inclusion of a very emotional scene with him late in the film. I just did not think we spent enough time with Alfred to make that scene feel justified. Sort of the same thing with Selena Kyle. It's a little different in her case because we actually did spend a fair amount of runtime with her, but still I feel like things expedited with her a little bit quicker than they should have. I don't really know how to dive any deeper into this without getting into spoilers, but let's just say with these two characters, I feel like there was prerequisite knowledge required for the characters to really get the full weight of what's happening with them. We all know the weird relationship between Catwoman and Batman. We also know that Alfred is sort of Batman / Bruce Wayne's pseudo-father, or at least we expect these two characters to be those people, those two roles. As a result of this expectation, I feel like the movie felt like it needed to kind of rush to get them to that point without laying the proper groundwork. Both felt a little rushed and a little skimpy, but hey, it's a 3-hour movie, something had to give. I have no reason to doubt that the full-length director's version of the film probably dives a little deeper into both of these relationships, and I have no problem with them leaving out these aspects for the theatrical cut. I mean, 3 hours is a long movie. All in all, though, I think this is the best movie I've seen in quite some time. I love the gritty realism to it, and I thought that Robert Pattinson crushed it. Anyone who thinks he cannot bring it because he was in Twilight over a decade ago? Delusions! I'm going to give The Batman an A-. But that's just me. What do you guys think? Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe to this channel to stay up to date. New reviews coming real soon. Stay safe. Thanks for checking in.